In today's video, someone's gone through that. Holme-next-the-Sea, graves behind me here, family of Horatio Nelson. I'll tell you what the connection between Nelson's here and Napoleon's family were. Time to go looking for the Seahenge. I can see it. A protected beach that played backdrop to archaeological turmoil. Wow, I think I've actually found it. Months of public controversy. A national disgrace to some people. The right thing to do for others. Reputational damage to one of the most prestigious institutions this country's ever had. The most controversial discoveries in British archaeological history. And today, I'm going to discover what's left of it. This is the story of the Seahenge. Another beautiful evening. I'm just going to make my way back to the main road because when I went past the sign for Holme-next-the-Sea, it had been absolutely decimated. So let's go have a look. Someone's gone through that, haven't they? Anyway, Holme-next-the-Sea is recorded in the Doomsday Book, but it is recorded as Holme, not an E on the end. And it's recorded as being a settlement of just 8 households. The word Holme means like a small low-lying island or a small piece of land by the water. Next the sea. Those sorts of suffixes were added later. There were too many places with the same names, and it was used as a mechanism by which to distinguish places to avoid confusion for royal officials and tax collectors sending decrees and mail to the same places. I love old markers like that. I wish there were more of them about. Quiet as you like. Perfect to come roaring through on a motorbike. Peddars Way is an ancient trail. Starts in Nettleshall Heath, which is near Thetford, probably predates the Romans. And in Holme-next-the-Sea, it meets the Norfolk coast path. Pedder is just somebody who goes from village to village selling goods out of basket. A pedder. And Peddars Way, the trail, the ancient trail, is said to be haunted by Black Shuck. Now, if you're not familiar with Black Shuck is a ghostly black dog, roams East Anglia. There's been hundreds of sightings of him. He's said to roam, particularly on hiking trails, in ancient paths. Black Shuck, allegedly, burst through the church doors of a church down in Suffolk, and simultaneously there was a clap of thunder. Black Shuck then took the lives of a man and a boy before the church steeple caved in. And when Black Shuck left the church, he left scratch marks on the church door, which can still be seen to this day. And that apparently happened at the Holy Trinity Church of Blyborough in Suffolk. Maybe one day I'll do a video on the hunt for Black Shuck and I'll go visit that church. That is the local pub. That pub has been in the village for hundreds of years. It served its local community as an inn. Sure, I do remember that pub being blue at some point. I did read that it's been refurbished in recent years. Walking up the lane to the church now to see if we can find the graves of Nelson's relatives. The village is gorgeous. Right, up ahead again is a muntjac in the road. They are everywhere. I saw one in the car park to my apartment building the other day. So I'm going to the churchyard. There is actually a very vague and distant connection between the Nelsons in this church, or buried in this churchyard, and a certain Mr. Napoleon Bonaparte, which I'll explain in a bit because it's quite hard to get right. There's the church. It fell into disrepair in the 18th century. And then again in the late part of the 19th century, it had to be restored once more, courtesy of a Mr. James Nelson. The church organ donated by a Mr. Thomas Nelson. Oh, there's quite a lot of graves there. Let's see if we can find Nelson's relatives. Edmund Nelson had multiple sons, and the Holme-next-the-Sea branch were descendants from his eldest son. Right, I'm going to have a little look without the camera. Found them, had to take my sunglasses off. Matthew Nelson, and there's a John Nelson. So these graves behind me here, they are the family of Horatio Nelson, or Admiral Lord Nelson, the greatest military commander in British history. It's kind of wild to think. The relatives are buried in a tiny little village in Norfolk. Kirkgate, Kiryagata, Church Street. Muntjac were more terrifying than Black Shuck. It just jumped out of a hedge and ran towards me, then saw me and I saw it. And it turned around trying to run away, but it fell when it turned. That's when I hit record and then off it scurried. Time to go looking for the Seahenge. I filmed my search for the Seahenge earlier today because I had to tie it into the tide times. Tell you what, I'll quickly walk over to the sign. And this is going to bring you to the Norfolk coast path, but you've got to get across the golf course. Make sure you look to your right. Right. Go across the fairway. You might get taken out. Nearly there. There you go. So if you want to do what I'm about to do and go looking for the Seahenge, you got to go up there. Okay, through the magic of video editing, I'm now on the hunt for the Seahenge. I might have timed this completely wrong. We'll see, but I've got about a 20-minute walk to get to the site of the Seahenge. Slack water, 45, 50 minutes, might just about be okay. So you got to try and picture the scene. Spring 1998. You're an amateur archaeologist / beachcomber, and you're out shrimping with your brother-in-law. And in the distance, you spot what looks like a tree trunk in the beach sand. You get a bit closer, and you realise it's a tree buried upside down with its roots pointing towards the sky. Most of the people would just think nothing of that. The guy that had spotted it, an amateur archaeologist. So he notifies Castle Museum in Norwich. At this point, it's just an upside down tree in the sand. They tell him just to monitor it. By August, a circle of timbers has become visible around the upside down tree in the sand. So he notifies them again. He also reaches out to any other archaeological contact he has because he's already found on the site a Bronze Age axe. This time they take a bit more notice. And now the site is looking like the beginnings of something big. The summer's gone, almost. And within the archaeological community, word is getting round. More and more of the site is becoming exposed. The timbers are becoming visible, easily visible. This is now some sort of man-made thing. And word is getting out locally. Something's been uncovered. In this time period, so autumn and winter of 1998, the experts that come out, they're able to put an approximate date on these timbers. There's tool markings and axe markings on them from axes that were used in the Bronze Age. Winter of 1998, there's now a formation of 55 timbers visible around a central point of an upside down tree in the sand on a beach in Norfolk. And the timbers have been backdated to approximately the Bronze Age. December 1998, people are taking their Christmas break and they're coming to have a look. And now interest has really grown. On the 9th of January 1999, the Independent newspaper, they publish it. Front page headline, "Shifting Sands Reveal Stonehenge of the Sea." And all hell breaks loose. Now it's obvious the discovery has been made. There's a Bronze Age monument on the Norfolk coast on a beach. What do you do with it? All the relevant organisations have now been made aware. It's in the national press. On the one hand, you've got the tourist boards in Norfolk and the locals who are proud of it. They want it to remain where it is. As well as them, New Age movements and the Neo-Pagans claiming spiritual ownership of it. Then on the flip side, you've got the people that want it removed. Well, they don't necessarily want it removed, but English heritage, for example, they know the sea coming and going, it now being exposed to the elements. If something isn't done to preserve it, it's just going to rot away in the sea. On top of that, the Norfolk Wildlife Trust, who have got massive concerns about the increased numbers visiting Holme Dunes. Holme Dunes is home to a lot of wildlife. Already in the first 3 months in 1999, had an extra 5,000 people come and visit because of the discovery. That amount of people coming and walking across the dunes, one, that's going to cause disruption to the birds and the wildlife, and two, it's going to ruin the dunes. So there's loads of to-in and fro-in, there's loads of controversy, in and out of the media quite a lot. Finally, in March, a decision is made by the chief archaeologist of English heritage at the time. He commissions £500,000 for that excavation and removal. But the protests do not stop. I hope I haven't gone too far. I'll have a look. Tide is right out at least. Even then, there were sub-protests about its location once it'd been removed. Of course, there was concern that it was going to be taken out of Norfolk. It would end up in the British Museum or somewhere. The excavation was very skilled work. They only had a 2-hour window in which they could work because of the tide. Only 2 hours because once they started work, they had to pump out the seawater and get rid of all the debris from the sea and the fish and the birds that were in the excavation area. And the protests continued. Protesters even tried to get a solicitor to stop the removal, but the solicitors wouldn't take on the work because they knew that they wouldn't win against English heritage. Even on the day of removal, there were people that had to be restrained by the police. Okay, now I think it's out there. And I know what you're probably thinking now. If it was removed, then what on earth am I looking for now? And that's where it gets even more interesting, because during the excavation of the Seahenge, they discovered another Seahenge. The Seahenge was removed and the timbers were taken away to Flag Fen near Peterborough for treatment. They were then moved on down to Portsmouth, where the Mary Rose Trust undertook more treatment on the timbers before they were finally rehoused in Lynn Museum down in King's Lynn, which is about 30 miles away from where they were first discovered. Just think of that, 4,000 years buried in the mud in Norfolk and you survive. Then you've got to be rehoused in a museum I completely understand why they did it. The reason why the timbers were so well preserved all that time is because they were in the ground. No oxidation could take place. And the peat bog, this wouldn't have been a beach back then. This wouldn't have been on the coast. Marshes. This would have been salt marshes inland. I think I can see it. Let's go have a look. This second Seahenge should act as definitive proof that they did the right thing, because this second Seahenge is barely there anymore. Wow. I think I've actually found it. That's pretty amazing. Okay, so you can see there, timbers, or the surface of the timbers. That's the two in the middle there. The internet said there's nothing visible left of Holme II. This is Holme II, which is slightly different because in the middle there were two timbers. In Holme I, there was one central upside down tree. In the middle of Holme II, just two timbers like that. They were both built at the same time. They managed to date them back to the exact same time. That's pretty cool. So you got to come at low tide. And you'll come up the coast path along the top of there. You got to find a way down to the beach. You could walk all the way along the top there, come down onto the beach out there, and you've got to walk out to here, which is almost in line with a timber hut that's got two windows on it. You come out here and you'll see these. And these are the two central things. Now there's all sorts of theories about what these were used for. Holme II, they think it was some sort of sacrificial thing. So let's say if there was a crop not growing in the village, whoever they thought was to blame would be laid across the two timbers in the middle of the circle, and they would be sacrificed. By the way, calling it Seahenge is a media term. It doesn't make any sense. Stonehenge is called Stonehenge because it means the suspended stones. So Seahenge, the suspended sea, it just doesn't make sense. But the media coined that and it stuck. So Seahenge was Holme I, and then the other one was Holme II. Edge of the arc of the oval here with these timbers. Then in the middle, you've got the two central ones. That's awesome, that. What a find. And there you go. These were put in place 4,000 years ago. The one with the tree upside down, one theory is that the upside down tree acts like a bridge between the old life and the new life, with the roots of the tree looking up. I just can't believe I found it. That's awesome. Just think what that amateur archaeologist must have been thinking. And no one would listen for months. One newspaper to publish it on the front page with a giant headline, and there you go, Norfolk has an ancient monument on the beach. It's gone slack water, time to get off the beach. If you come down here and visit Holme II, promise me one thing, you will constantly keep looking around for the tide. The tides in Norfolk, they don't just come in horizontally, they don't, so it's out, the sea's out there now and the coast is out there. It's not how the tide works. The tide can come up through the ground as well. You've got little streams of water closer to the shore, and as the tide comes in, the water comes up through the sand. You're not keeping an eye on it, and you're out looking for the Seahenge. You'll get cut off if you're not careful. Always pay attention to the tide. It's in line with this. That's had its foundations undermined. Look, foundations, there's nothing underneath them. That's how brutal erosion is on the Norfolk coast. Look up the tide times, get here about 15 minutes before low tide and do the walk. Don't muck about, just get straight to it. You've got maybe a 40-minute window on the beach, okay? Then get off the beach. So there you go. Seahenge 2 is still there, regardless of what you may read on the internet. I mean, it is disintegrating, don't get me wrong, but it's still there, you can find it. I really do think that English Heritage had to remove it, and they did make the right decision in doing so. That was about one of the only correct decisions they made in the whole saga. If you do come to visit West Norfolk and come to visit and try and find the Seahenge, if you get talking to some locals, ask them if they were here during the Seahenge saga. For some people, it's still a very sore talking point. I've brought it up in conversation to some people, and the consensus seems to be they accept that it had to be removed to preserve it. But it was the way in which it was done that upset people. You've got a tiny little community here. The village, Holme-next-the-Sea, is tiny. It's a couple of hundred people. Discoveries made by a local guy. And English Heritage came in and it was like they ruled with an iron fist. Anything they said went. And they flexed every single ounce of institutional muscle that they had. They didn't even engage with the protesters until June of 1999. If you go back and look at the timeline of events that I went through during the video, the decision to remove the timbers was made in March of 1999. Usually when a decision like that is made, there's a consultation process in the months prior. They made that decision with no consultation, and then the only reason that they talked to the protesters in June of 99 was because they wanted them out of the way. That being said, hindsight is always 20/20, and it did force English Heritage to change the way they did things. It's actually now a high-profile case study on how not to handle public relations. Well, I've been to the museum where Seahenge is housed. There's loads of information about the discovery and the excavation and transporting it and the dating of it and all the rest of it. There's barely any information on display about the PR disaster it was for English heritage. For that, you got to go and do your own research. Seahenge is gone, it is in a museum. Holme II is still in the sand. One of the reasons that it is still in the sand is because they didn't want to deal with all the backlash again. That, and they just spent £500,000 on removing Holme I. £500,000 in 1999 is worth over £1 million in today's money. So it was no joke financially, and they didn't want to deal with the public backlash again. In a way, the protesters did have the desired effect that they wanted. Holme II was left in place. Anyway, the connection between Napoleon and Nelson. So the wife of Matthew Nelson, who's buried in that churchyard, her mother was a lady called Anne-Jane de Klerk, and she was the niece of General de Klerk, who was a general in the French Revolutionary armies, and he was married to Pauline Bonaparte. And Pauline Bonaparte was the younger sister of Napoleon Bonaparte. So Matthew Nelson's mother-in-law was the niece of a general that was married to Napoleon's younger sister. So there you go. Two of the greatest naval commanders the world has ever seen were actually related in the end. See, it looks calm and tranquil in the sunset. But across 1998 and 1999, out there, covered by the water now, was a scene of many a confrontation and an enormous amount of controversy. I love English heritage, by the way. It's just if you go around and ask people and do some research, they did not put themselves in the best light during the Seahenge saga. One thing I missed when I was on the beach is that they do think the two henges were connected. So they think that the sacrificial ritual would be carried out at Holme II on the two timbers. Then the body of the deceased would be taken across to the upside down tree trunk, where it'd be laid pointing up towards the sky, and birds and wildlife would come and pick away at the flesh, leaving only the bones. Excarnation. If you do come and visit West Norfolk, you have to come and see the Seahenge. It's amazing. You got to think those timbers, they were put in place by somebody 4,000 years ago. And also, the dunes are beautiful. Time to get back to the bike. Maybe one day there'll be another discovery on Holme Beach. But for now, my name is Kiddy. The channel's called Norfolk Kiddy. And if you love the Norfolk coast, please hit subscribe. See ya.